My parents bought my brother a brand new Jeep for graduation while they gave me only a lottery ticket, so I taught them a lesson that made them pay. My name's Max, 23, male, and I'm a twin. But not one of those cool, mysterious twin stories you see in movies. Nah, I'm the twin that basically exists as a background character in my own life. My brother Ethan, he's the main character. Always has been. Let me paint you a picture of our household. Dad's a truck dispatcher, which sounds way more exciting than it is. Basically, he tells truckers where to go and when. Mom works part-time at a dental office, the kind of place where she knows every patient's life story and can stretch a dollar so thin it's practically transparent. Ethan was the golden boy. We're talking perfect hair, perfect smile, quarterback of the high school football team, the type of guy who could literally trip and still look cool doing it. Teachers would get this weird sparkle in their eyes when they talked about him. Ethan's got potential, they'd say. Potential for what? Being the next local legend, apparently. Me? I was working nights at the Oakdale Logistics warehouse. Exciting, I know. My potential was lifting heavy boxes and trying not to fall asleep during the graveyard shift. While Ethan was getting invited to every party and winning most likely to succeed awards, I was succeeding at, well, not much. Our town was the definition of small-town America, the kind of place where your entire life story is basically written before you hit high school. Ethan was destined for greatness, football scholarship, local hero, the works. And I was destined to be Ethan's brother. Every family gathering was like a highlight reel of Ethan's achievements. Aunt Linda would corner me and be like, "So Ethan's going to play college football?" And I'd be like, "Yep, cool." Meanwhile, I'm thinking about my next warehouse shift and whether I can afford new work boots. Don't get me wrong, I love my brother. Well, most of the time. We had that weird twin connection where I'd know he ate the last slice of pizza before he even moved. But love doesn't mean it didn't sting, watching him get everything handed to him on a silver platter. Our parents weren't deliberately cruel. They just didn't get it. To them, Ethan was the investment, the one who was going places. I was the backup plan, the well, at least he's trying kid. Every conversation somehow circled back to Ethan's potential. Did you hear Ethan might get a full ride? Mom would ask at dinner. And Max got employee of the month at the warehouse, I'd mumble. Silence. Then back to Ethan. I learned early on that in our family, and in Oakdale, there was a hierarchy, and I was firmly at the bottom. But there was one person who never treated me like a footnote, my grandpa. The man was a walking contradiction, old school but sharp as hell, quiet but full of wisdom, and somehow always knew exactly when you needed to hear something real. He'd show up unannounced with stale cookies and stories about the good old days. But he was the only person who looked at me like I was more than just Ethan's brother. "Kid, you ever think about what you want?" He asked me once when I was 16, sitting on the porch while Ethan was off at some football camp. "Sure," I said, kicking at the dirt. "But nobody else does." Grandpa just chuckled. "That's their mistake, not yours." I didn't get it then. Anyway, the warehouse wasn't all bad. Jake, my work buddy, got me through those long nights. He was this hilarious guy who could make even the most boring inventory shift feel like a comedy show. "Dude," he'd say, looking at another stack of boxes, "we're living the dream." But here's the thing about being the other twin. You develop a sense of humor. You learn to laugh at yourself before anyone else can. You become observant. While Ethan was busy being the star, I was watching, learning, plotting my own path. Senior year was supposed to be this epic time of your life, at least that's what every teen movie and TV show promised. For me, it was more like survival mode with a side of constant comparison. Ethan's life was basically a highlight reel, football practice, college scouts, parties every weekend. And I was perfecting the art of blending into the background. My typical day: wake up, go to school, work warehouse shift, repeat. Rinse and wash, as they say. Our high school was the typical small-town setup, the kind of place where your entire future seemed predetermined the moment you walked through those doors. And Ethan, he was walking hallway royalty. Teachers would stop him to chat about his bright future. Football coaches treated him like he was the next big NFL prospect. Graduation planning became this massive production. Mom was like a military strategist planning Ethan's graduation party, Pinterest boards, color-coordinated decorations, the works. While my contribution? Making sure I had a clean shirt to wear. The pressure was real. Everyone kept asking, "What are you doing after graduation?" For Ethan, it was simple: football scholarship to state university, guaranteed path. I had a community college application and a warehouse job. Not exactly front-page news. I started to develop this dry sense of humor as a defense mechanism. When people would ask about my plans, I'd say something like, "Oh, you know, keeping the economy moving one box at a time." Laugh to keep from crying, right? Our school was typical small-town America, the kind of place where your entire life trajectory seemed mapped out before you hit your senior year. Football stars get scholarships, smart kids get academic awards, and guys like me, we keep the world running behind the scenes. The weird part about being a twin is the constant comparison. We looked similar, same dark hair, same build, but that's where the similarities ended. Ethan was loud, confident, the center of attention. I was the quiet observer, the one who noticed everything but said little. Our parents meant well, I know that. They weren't trying to make me feel small. But good intentions don't erase the constant feeling of being second best. Every achievement of Ethan's was celebrated like a national holiday. My achievements? Footnotes. As graduation approached, the excitement grew, for everyone else, that is. I was just counting down until I could start my next chapter. Community college, warehouse job, the exciting life, right? Jake would joke with me during our shifts, dude, you're going to break out of this small town someday and build a tech startup. I can feel it. I'd laugh it off, but a part of me hoped he was right. Our town of Oakdale was the kind of place where everyone knew your business, where your high school reputation followed you like a shadow. Ethan's shadow was bright, blazing. Mine? Just trying to stay visible. Graduation was coming, the big day that was supposed to be our launch into the world. Ethan had his path crystal clear. Me? About as clear as my chances of becoming the next local hero. And Oakdale made sure to remind me, graduation day here is like someone took every single small-town cliché and cranked it up to 11. Imagine a community center gym that looked like a patriotic Pinterest board had a baby with a party supply store. Balloons big enough to lift a small car floated everywhere. Banners screamed, "We are so proud." And the whole setup somehow managed to both celebrate and judge your life choices at the same time. Ethan was in his absolute element, of course he was. He could walk across that stage and make it look like a Hollywood movie trailer moment. Teachers who'd watched him grow up were practically throwing themselves at him with congratulations. "You're going places," they'd say. And everyone, and I mean everyone, in Oakdale believed it. The weeks leading up to graduation were a non-stop Ethan appreciation tour. Football coaches would pull him aside for special talks. Local businesses would offer congratulations. The local newspaper did a feature on him. Local football star headed to State University. My name wasn't even mentioned in the article. Our parents had been dropping hints about a special graduation gift for weeks. At family dinners, they'd exchange knowing looks. Aunt Linda would lean in and whisper about how Ethan was going to do big things. Uncle Mark would talk about how Ethan reminded him of himself back in the day, as if being a mediocre high school football player was some kind of lifetime achievement. I'd sit there picking at my food, wondering if anyone would notice if I just disappeared. The graduation ceremony was exactly as boring as you'd expect. Endless speeches about potential and dreams, the kind of motivational talks that sound deep but mean absolutely nothing. When Ethan's name was called, the crowd went absolutely wild, standing ovation, whistles, cheers that would have woken the dead. My name? Announced with all the enthusiasm of reading a grocery list. But the real show was about to begin. The after party was peak celebrate Ethan mode. Our backyard looked like it had been designed by an overzealous event planner with a patriotic theme. Fairy lights everywhere. A massive banner that might as well have said, "Ethan is the greatest thing since sliced bread," in giant letters. Family, friends, they were showering him with gifts like he just discovered the cure for something. Then came the moment everyone was waiting for, the big gift. Mom and Dad exchanged that look, you know, the one where parents are about to do something they think is absolutely epic. The entire backyard went quiet. Ethan's friends leaned in, whispering and guessing. Dad pulled out a key fob, not just any key fob, the kind that screams, "This is going to be good." Ethan's eyes went wide. His friends started nudging each other. "No way," they whispered. We all rushed outside, and there it was, a brand new Jeep Wrangler Rubicon, metallic blue, top down, looking like it drove straight out of a summer adventure movie, the kind of vehicle that practically begs for Instagram photos and road trip adventures. Ethan lost his mind completely. He was jumping around like a kid who'd just been told Christmas was coming early. No freaking way. He kept repeating, running his hands over the Jeep's hood, revving the engine, connecting his phone to the Bluetooth in about 0.2 seconds. His friends went absolutely crazy. High fives flew. Selfies were taken faster than you could blink. Immediate plans for beach trips and lake adventures were being made. Morgan Wallen started playing through the speakers, because of course it did. Peak small-town summer moment. Me? I was standing back, watching the show, letting it all sink in. This was peak Ethan. Peak small-town golden boy moment. Meanwhile, Dad clapped me on the shoulder with this look that said, "Sorry, son, but we've got something different for you." Mom handed me a small white envelope. No keys. No oversized bow. Just paper. The crowd went quiet. Awkward silence settled over the backyard. I opened it, trying to convince myself it would be something cool. Maybe a check for college, maybe tickets to a local game. Inside, a $25 gas station gift card and a lottery ticket. The awkward chuckle started immediately. My childhood friend Jake nudged me and whispered, "Hey, at least now you can buy that Xbox controller you've been complaining about." I forced a laugh. What else do you do when life hands you a slap in the face disguised as a gift? Ethan and his friends were already piling into the Jeep, arguing about who got shotgun. Mom hugged me tight, whispering something about bigger things ahead, but her voice got drowned out by the Jeep's engine and Ethan yelling about heading to Dairy Queen. Dad gave me that nod, the chin up, kid nod that's supposed to make everything better, like a pat on the back could somehow balance out years of being the afterthought. I stuffed the envelope into my pocket and slipped out to the porch, feeling like I had just been handed proof that I wasn't worth the big gestures, the grand surprises, or even a second thought. Just an afterthought with a lottery ticket. After that night, the house was quiet. The excitement of the day slowly fading like the last bits of sunlight. Everyone was exhausted. Mom from planning the perfect party, Dad from playing photographer, Ethan from being the center of attention, and me, I was just existing. I remember sitting in my room, surrounded by the remnants of my childhood, boxes half packed for community college. My entire life looked like a collection of almost but not quite moments. The lottery ticket sat on my desk, just sitting there, another reminder of how little was expected of me. I'd seen Jake buy these tickets 100 times at the gas station where we'd grab energy drinks during our warehouse breaks, always joking about how he'd spend the money. "First thing I'd do," he'd say, "is quit this job and buy a sick car." I wasn't much of a gambler. Never saw the point. Life had already taught me that luck wasn't really my thing. But something, maybe boredom, maybe a tiny spark of hope, made me grab my phone. There was an app for everything these days, including checking lottery tickets. I scanned the ticket, thinking, it's probably nothing. It was always nothing. Except this time, it wasn't nothing. The numbers started to blur together. $7 million. $7 million. I made this weird sound, part laugh, part gasp, part I just stubbed my toe yelp, the kind of noise that would have made Jake lose it if he'd been there. My brain couldn't process what was happening. This wasn't buy a new video game money. This was completely change my entire life money. I couldn't believe it. For a moment, I just sat there frozen, thinking about every single time I'd been overlooked. Every family gathering where Ethan was the star and I was the background character. Every time someone asked about my future and I'd mumble something about the warehouse or community college, Jake was the first person I thought to tell. But no, rule number 1 of winning the lottery, don't tell anyone. My mind started racing. What do people do when they win? I grabbed my laptop and started Googling, what to do if you win the lottery. The internet was full of advice: get a lawyer, stay anonymous, don't make any big decisions immediately. The house was so quiet I could hear the distant hum of the TV downstairs, probably some sports highlight show featuring Ethan's football clips. Mom and Dad would be talking about his future, his scholarship, his potential, as always, and here I was with a ticket that could change everything. I thought about all the times I'd been invisible, the warehouse shifts, the community college plans, the constant comparison to Ethan. This wasn't just money. This was a chance to rewrite my entire story. But winning wasn't going to be simple. Nothing in my life had ever been simple. My phone buzzed. It was Jake. "Yo, did you check that ticket yet?" I stared at the message. Normally, I'd make some sarcastic joke. But right now, my world was tilting on its axis. $7 million. The number kept repeating in my head. It wasn't real. It couldn't be real. But deep down, I knew it was. This was more than money. This was a lifeline, a way out, a chance to show everyone, my family, my town, myself, that I was more than just Ethan's twin, more than the guy who worked the warehouse night shift. I looked around my room, the same room I'd grown up in, watched Ethan get everything while I got the leftovers. And now? Now everything could change. Now, keeping a $7 million secret is harder than you'd think, especially in a town where everyone knows everything about everyone. My first move was pure paranoia. I opened a new bank account at a branch 2 towns over, drove my beat-up Honda, the one that made more noise than a dying lawnmower, just to make sure no one would recognize me. The bank teller looked like she'd rather be anywhere else, which worked perfectly for me. Brian, my new financial advisor, looked like he'd just graduated business school, pressed polo, khakis that looked freshly ironed, and a smile that screamed, "I can totally manage your money." I was half expecting him to ask if I wanted to see his hall pass. "So Brian," he said, shuffling some papers, "tell me about your financial goals." Goals? I'd been working warehouse shifts and counting pennies. My previous financial goal was making sure I could afford gas and maybe grab a pizza on Friday nights. Now I was sitting across from a financial advisor with $7 million burning a hole in my metaphorical pocket. Jake was the only person who felt something was up. "Dude, you're acting weird," he'd say during our warehouse shifts. More weird than usual, I mean. I'd just laugh it off. How do you tell your work buddy that you've just become a millionaire? My first real purchase was a statement, a fully loaded Ford Mustang GT, the kind of car that would make Ethan's Jeep look like a toy. When I pulled up to our house, the look on everyone's faces was priceless. Ethan nearly spit out his Mountain Dew. "No way," he laughed. "This is like an Uber rental, right?" "Yep," I shrugged. Testing it out. No one questioned it. They were too busy assuming I'd somehow scored some weird side gig. Classic small-town assumptions. My investments were calculated. Some tech startups Jake had mentioned, a few solid stock picks. I wasn't trying to become a financial guru, just trying to make sure this money lasted. The warehouse job became my cover. I kept showing up, kept working shifts, made sure nothing looked suspicious. But inside, I was planning my escape from the life everyone had mapped out for me. During that time, I met this chick, let's call her Kate. And man, she was nothing like the ones who used to roll their eyes at me in high school. Kate was in college studying to be a scientist or something equally brainy, the type of girl who could break down complex theories like it was light gossip and still have time to roast you for using the wrong year. She had that sharp, no-nonsense vibe, like she could dismantle both an argument and a physics equation in the same breath. Our first date wasn't at some overpriced restaurant or a flashy club. It was at this hole-in-the-wall coffee shop where the barista practically knew your credit card number by heart. "So," she said, stirring her latte with this look that was half curious, half challenging, "you're the warehouse guy with the mysterious Mustang." I laughed, a real laugh, the kind you let out when someone cuts straight through whatever image you're trying to project. If only she knew the half of it. Small towns work like broken telephones on steroids. Secrets have a shelf life shorter than a cup of gas station coffee. But I was learning how to play the game, work my shifts at the warehouse, drop just enough truth about side gigs to keep people from asking too many questions. My parents were still in full Ethan mode, football scholarship, golden boy, the whole 9 yards. And me? I was becoming invisible, which honestly was exactly what I wanted. Jake was my partner in crime, my only real confidant through this whole crazy journey. During our late-night warehouse shifts, he'd be the only one who truly got it. "Dude," he'd say between stacking boxes, "you're like a superhero with the world's most boring secret identity." I'd laugh, but it felt true. The money changed everything and nothing. I was still me, the overlooked twin, the guy most people forgot existed. But now I had options. A real plan. When people asked about my future, I'd just smile and give some vague answer about exploring opportunities. Little did they know I was exploring opportunities they couldn't even dream of. My bedroom transformed into my personal war room, financial documents spread everywhere, investment spreadsheets covering every surface, plans within plans. I was like a low-budget financial mastermind, minus the fancy suit. For the first time in my life, I wasn't just reacting to the world. I was preparing to take it on. But of course, secrets don't last long in small towns. It's like trying to hide a fart in an elevator. Eventually everyone knows it was you, and you're just the jackass pretending it didn't happen. I'd been playing it cool for weeks, working my warehouse shifts, driving my suspiciously nice Mustang GT, and slowly building my double life like some budget Batman. Well, maybe some trauma, but nothing that required a cape. Tuesday night, I remember it perfectly because Tuesdays always suck. I dragged myself home after a particularly brutal warehouse shift where some genius had ordered triple the usual shipment of bathroom fixtures. My back felt like I'd been wrestling bears. I walked in to find Ethan sprawled on the couch, scrolling through his phone with the intensity of someone who thinks sports stats count as a personality trait. Mom was doing that thing where she watches Food Network but has never once attempted to make anything she sees. Dad was paying bills at the kitchen table. Then Ethan held up my jacket. "Nice jacket," he said, way too casually. Guess what I found in the pocket? My stomach dropped faster than my GPA during senior year. The smirk on his face told me everything I needed to know. I was so screwed. Financial documents aren't exactly subtle, especially when they show a $100,000 investment in Tesla in my name with my social security number. Rookie mistake, the kind that makes you want to build a time machine just so you can go back and slap yourself. "What's this?" Mom asked, snatching the papers from Ethan's hand and squinting at them. The living room transformed into something between a courtroom and a family intervention. Mom's eyes went wide like she just spotted a celebrity at Walmart. Dad abandoned his bills, suddenly very interested in my financial situation. "Funny how that works. We need to talk about this," Dad said, using his serious voice. Mom's face cycled through every emotion known to mankind before settling on outraged entitlement. "We bought that ticket," she declared, her voice shaking. "Which means that money belongs to the family." Dad nodded, calculator already running in his head. "Think about all we've done for you, college costs, your upbringing, the roof over your head. We deserve a share." Ethan just sat there with this smug grin, already planning how he'd spend our money, probably calculating how many Instagram followers he could get with a new jet ski or whatever douchebags buy to impress other douchebags. "How much did you win?" Dad asked, trying to sound casual but failing miserably. I considered lying, saying it was just a few grand, nothing major. But what was the point? The documents were right there. 7 million, I said. The words felt strange in my mouth. The silence that followed was thick enough to cut with a knife. Then they all started talking at once. Mom went straight to guilt mode. "And you didn't think to tell us? Your own family? After everything we've done for you?" Dad was already mentally spending it. "This could pay off the mortgage. Your mother could finally retire. Ethan could get a new car after the accident." Ethan predictably went for the jugular. "Dude, you've been holding out on us while driving around in that Mustang? That's cold." I looked them dead in the eye, feeling something snap inside me, something that had been bending for years, stretching thin every time Ethan got praised for breathing while I got ignored for actual achievements. "No chance," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "What?" Mom looked genuinely confused, like she couldn't process the concept of me refusing. I said no. The ticket was my graduation gift. The money is mine. Dad leaned forward, using his reasonable voice. "Son, you're not thinking clearly. This kind of money needs to be managed properly, for the family." I'd spent my entire life being the background character in the Ethan show, always the supporting role, never the lead, the understudy who never got called up. But that night, something changed. I was done being the audience to my own life. "You want to talk about family?" I said, the words coming out with years of built-up pressure behind them. "Let's talk about family." I laid it all out, every single thing I'd been holding in since we were kids. How Ethan got everything, the sports gear, the constant support. How I got leftovers and hand-me-downs like I was a charity case in my own home. How I worked nights at the warehouse while he partied. How they always treated me like an afterthought, a backup plan, the other twin. "Remember graduation?" I asked, pacing now because sitting still felt impossible. "Just think about what you did that day, and then come and talk about family." Mom flinched like I'd slapped her. Dad's face went through some complex gymnastics before settling on defensive anger. "That's not fair," Mom said weakly. "We've always treated you boys the same." I actually laughed out loud. "When's the last time you came to anything I did? When's the last time we had a family dinner that didn't revolve around Ethan's latest football game or college prospect or whatever girl he's dating?" Ethan shifted uncomfortably on the couch. For once, he wasn't jumping in with some smartass comment. Maybe because even he couldn't deny the truth. "I'm not your backup fund," I told them, standing up and grabbing my keys from the counter. "I'm done being the spare tire in this family. Done being Ethan's shadow. Done being the afterthought in every conversation." They were stunned, like they couldn't believe the background character in their family drama had suddenly developed a backbone and a speaking role. No one had ever called them out like this before. Dad tried the guilt trip, talking about family responsibilities and how we should support each other. But it hit different now, like someone trying to sell me a used car I'd already test-driven and found lacking. Where exactly was all this talk about family support when I was working double shifts to afford community college textbooks? I asked. Mom started crying, which would have worked on me before, the classic mom tears that made you feel like the worst son in the world. But I was immune now. "This isn't about the money," I said, quieter now. "This is about respect. About being seen. And I've never had either in this house." Ethan finally spoke up. "Dude, you're being dramatic. It's not like we treated you like crap." "No," I agreed. "That would have required acknowledging my existence." That night, I packed a bag, nothing dramatic, just the essentials: clothes, laptop, a half-eaten bag of Doritos because I'm not a monster who wastes perfectly good chips. As I walked out, I could hear Mom crying in the kitchen. As I reached for the door, Dad's voice cut through the air like a knife. "If you walk out that door, don't bother coming back. You're no son of mine." I froze for a second, my grip tightening around the bag. "You think you can just take that money and leave?" He continued, his voice shaking with something between rage and desperation. "That ticket was a gift from us. We bought it with our money. That means the winnings belong to this family." Mom's muffled sobs from the kitchen only fueled his anger. "You owe us, Max. That money was never just yours to keep." I turned around slowly, meeting his glare with one of my own. "Funny," I said, my voice steady. "I don't remember you calling it ours when you handed Ethan the keys to a brand new Jeep." His face twisted, veins bulging at his temple. But I was done. Without another word, I walked out, slamming the door behind me. I spent the night at a motel off the highway, the kind of place that charges by the hour and definitely doesn't wash the comforters. But it was quiet, and I had the best sleep I'd had in years. Funny how removing yourself from a toxic situation will do that. The next morning, I signed a lease on a small apartment downtown. And for once in my life, I didn't have to compare it to what Ethan had. As I moved my meager belongings into my new place, I felt something I hadn't felt in years: hope. Not the desperate kind that gets you through another warehouse shift, the real kind. The kind that makes you realize maybe, just maybe, your story is just beginning. It was quiet for a while after I left. Almost peaceful. No guilt trips, no passive-aggressive remarks. Just silence. And then, a few months in, my phone started ringing. At first, I ignored it, same old numbers. Mom, Dad, even Ethan tried. I let them go to voicemail. Then one day, the messages changed. Max, honey, Mom's voice wobbled. Your dad and I. We're in a bit of a situation. Things are tight, the mortgage, Ethan's tuition. We just need a little help. Just a small loan. We'll pay you back. Dad's message was more direct. This family took care of you for 18 years. The least you could do is return the favor. Even Ethan chimed in with a text. Bro, be real. You don't even need all that money. Family first, right? That one made me laugh. Family first? Since when? The irony of it all, though, the same parents who never saw me suddenly had perfect vision when their wallets were empty. The same brother who had everything handed to him was now looking to me for a handout. I didn't respond, not because I was bitter, not because I wanted to see them struggle, but because for the first time in my life, I wasn't their safety net. I wasn't the backup plan. And I refused to be their ATM. 12 months after that showdown with my family, life had done a complete 180, the kind of change that makes people do double takes when they see you around town, like they're not quite sure they've got the right guy. Ethan's football scholarship fell through after he totaled his Jeep trying to impress some freshmen by drifting in a Walmart parking lot. Turns out college recruiters don't love it when their star prospects get arrested for reckless driving and public intoxication. Who knew? The golden boy's shine had tarnished faster than cheap jewelry in a hot shower. Last I heard, he was working construction and living in our parents' basement. His Instagram went from party pics and football highlights to motivational quotes about the grind and hustling, which is always the social media equivalent of hitting rock bottom. Meanwhile, my investments were skyrocketing. That tech startup Jake recommended went public, and suddenly I wasn't just comfortable, I was successful. The kind of successful that makes people who ignored you in high school suddenly remember you were always such good friends. The kind that has your phone blowing up with messages from distant relatives who just wanted to check in. I'd kept my warehouse job for a couple months after moving out, just to maintain appearances. But eventually, I didn't see the point in working night shifts when my portfolio was generating more in a day than I made in a month lifting boxes. Kate had been with me through the entire roller coaster, from that first coffee date where I was still just the warehouse guy with mysteriously nice shoes, to becoming my rock when the shit hit the fan with my family. She never wavered, never questioned, just stood by my side with that signature raised eyebrow that said I told you so without her having to speak a word. Kate wasn't impressed by the money. Never had been. She was impressed that I finally grew a spine and stood up for myself. It's about damn time, she'd said when I told her about the confrontation with my family. I was starting to wonder if you were ever going to realize your worth wasn't tied to your brother's approval. In fact, she was the one who encouraged me to invest rather than blow the money on stupid shit to impress people. You've got one shot to set yourself up for life, she told me over Chinese takeout in my tiny apartment. Don't waste it trying to play catch up with Ethan. That's a game you don't even want to win. When I finally set up my first major investment portfolio, she'd celebrated with me, to financial independence, she toasted, and to finally being the main character in your own damn story. My Mustang parked next to Ethan's beat-up Jeep at family dinners I rarely attended. My confidence through the roof, the kind of confidence that comes from realizing your worth isn't tied to someone else's opinion of you. My grandpa was the only one from my family I stayed in regular contact with. He came by my new place one afternoon, bringing those stale cookies he always buys from the grocery store that I pretend to enjoy. Always knew you had something special, he told me, looking around at my apartment with pride in his eyes. Sometimes the quiet ones surprise everyone. Then he dropped the bomb. Apparently, he'd bought the lottery ticket, given it to my parents specifically for me. Knew you'd do something smart with it, he said with a wink. Your brother would have blown it all on something shiny. I wasn't even mad. How could I be? The old man had secretly changed my life. Kate moved in 6 months after we started dating, bringing with her an impressive collection of science books and a cat named Hydrogen who seemed personally offended by my existence. We weren't perfect, but we were real, no pretense, no constant competition, just two people figuring it out together. Meanwhile, my family was learning some hard lessons about consequences. My parents called occasionally, their tone different now, less demanding, more hesitant. Evolution in action. One night, Kate asked me if I missed them, the real them, not the idea of what a family should be. Sometimes, I admitted. But I don't miss who I was when I was with them. She nodded, understanding perfectly because that's just Kate. Sometimes the family you choose is better than the one you're born into. Looking at her across our small but comfortable apartment, I knew she was right. I didn't need to be the star of anyone else's show anymore. I was building my own, scene by scene, day by day, just Max. The guy who turned a $25 gas card and a lottery ticket into a whole new life.